All right, you could begin.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, class members of the MGPS group. My name is Marvin Richardson. I am here along with Lowain Hercules and Derek Maraj. We are group 5. Today, we are going to be presenting from the book of leadership, DAFT, chapter 6, which is courage and moral leadership. The content of this chapter is based on moral leadership today, acting like a moral leader, becoming a moral leader, servant leadership, and leadership courage. The learning outcome of this chapter, combined with rational approach to leadership with a concern for people and ethics, recognize your own stage of moral development and ways to accelerate your moral maturation. Know and use mechanisms that enhance an ethical organizational culture. Apply the principles of stewardship and servant leadership. Recognize courage in others and unlock your own potential to live and act courageously. So my first question to the class this evening is, what is moral leadership? Anyone can answer this time as to what they think moral leadership is. Anyone?
Marvin?
Yes, good day, Natasha.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I believe moral leadership has to do with the conduct or the behavior of a leader that concerns not only distinguishing between right and wrong, but also promoting right doing in an effort to influence the followers to achieve the goals or, let's say, to fulfill purpose. At least that's what I
Okay.
think it is.
All right. All right. Anybody else would like to add to what Natasha just said?
Yeah, I want to believe that it speaks to a moral leader who will try to set the best example, set the right example for others.
Example. Yes. 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 That is so true. The both of you are on par. All right. So the definition that I have here would be moral leadership refers to a leader that exemplifies strong moral values, selflessness, and integrity. Decision making in moral leadership is guided by an inherent ethical system and moral purpose. Self disciplined, compassionate, and responsible, moral leaders prefer to lead and inspire others by setting an example and establishing moral goals. Right? So that's the basic of what a moral leader or how a moral leader supposed to act or what he's supposed to show by lead by example. Right. So my next question is, what do you think, or what are some of the categories that think moral leadership will be broken up into? It is broken up into 3 categories. But what are some of the words that you think will associate itself with the word or the words moral leadership? Anyone?
I think it has to do with, well, for one, fairness. I
All
would
right.
say integrity, honesty, well, things like that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? Because there's a lot, pertaining to moral leadership. Because most of us are in leadership roles and leadership position. We have also known individuals in leadership position, and we might have admired them in some little way or the other. So what are some of the values that you'll think that individual have good moral? Anybody else? Anything to add?
Right, Marvin, I think you'll be thinking about the person's personal capability, whether he's able to be a leader.
Okay.
But then
All
you
right.
have
The
to evaluate
capabilities.
himself. You have to reflect, and then he will have to a perseverance. You have to persevere in order to be a leader.
Right. Yes. Yes. I'll take that. I'll take that, Kenny. Thanks very much for your contribution. I'll take one more person.
Marvin, about
Yeah.
accountability.
Accountability. That is a very good point. Accountability. Right. And as we go further and deeper into the lesson this evening, we will get into accountability and many other things. So here I have a nice little, 3-pillar columns of leadership, right? So it is basically broken down into categories where you have personal capabilities, you have interpersonal capabilities, and you have social capabilities, right? You have self-evaluation under personal capabilities, reflection, initiative, perseverance, as Kenny had said, self-discipline, gratitude, and systematic thinking. And then we move on to interpersonal capabilities, meaning what an individual of himself does internally. This is where internal thinking comes in. Empathy, right? Encouragement, uh, consolidation, family responsibility, promoting units, right? So we move on to social capabilities, where you have vision, transforming dormant relationships, justice, empowerment, service to institution, and historical perspective, right? And then you have transcendency, right, as one of the steps as leading to moral leadership. Then you have service, nobility, and truth. So these are terms in which a moral leader must possess or should possess. And sometimes, over a period of time, as we learn and we go through experience, because they say life, experience is the best teacher, right? So as you go along in life and you experience different things, you should evaluate yourself and put all of these different capabilities into one, so you can become or have the reflection of a moral leader. Right. So here I have a short video where you all can hear about moral leadership.
This course explores ideas related to moral leadership. Let's get started. First, let's agree on a definition. Moral leadership is about holding or manifesting high principles for proper conduct. We all know that leaders face many pressures that challenge our ability to do the right thing. The most dangerous obstacles for leaders are personal weaknesses and self-interest, rather than full-scale corruption in an organization. That's why sticking to one's core values in the face of pressure is one key part of leading authentically and ethically. Leaders carry a tremendous responsibility for setting the ethical climate and acting as a positive role model for others. Leaders signal what matters through their behavior, and when leaders operate from principles of selfishness or greed, many employees come to see that type of behavior as being okay. Ethical leaders aren't preoccupied with their own importance. They keep the focus on employees, customers, and the greater good, rather than taking every opportunity to satisfy their own self-interest, feed their greed, or nourish their egos. Unethical leaders typically pay more attention to gaining benefits for themselves than the organization, the larger society, or their followers. Ethical leaders tend to share the credit for success and accept the blame when things go wrong, whereas unethical leaders often take the credit for followers' accomplishments and diminish the dignity of others by treating people with discourtesy and disrespect. But leadership is not merely a set of principles with no association with right or wrong. Moral leadership is about distinguishing right from wrong and doing right, seeking the just, the honest, the good, and the right conduct in achieving goals and fulfilling purpose. Leaders have great influence over others, and moral leadership uplifts people and enhances the lives of others. Immoral leadership, on the other hand, takes away from others in order to enhance oneself. Leaders most often know what's right. The question becomes how they choose to act on it and what internal strengths and external policies and processes are in place to enable them to follow through on doing the right thing. Research has consistently found a direct relationship between the higher levels of moral development and more ethical behavior on the job, including less cheating, tendency towards helpfulness of others, and reporting of unethical or illegal acts.
Right. So there we have moral leadership. Now we're going to talk about moral leadership today, and basically what happens in the world today. And I'm pretty sure most of you here can share an example based on of some of the things that happens or goes on in this country and also in a work environment. So I'll give you a few examples. Every decade sees its shares of political, social, and corporate villains. But the pervasiveness of ethical lapse in recent years has been astounding. In the political arena, the US Representative Mark Floyd resigns amid allegations that he engaged in sexual explicit online chat. You know, right here in Trinidad, right, plenty of these things actually take place but under law, and then sometimes some of it actually come to light. For example, I remember there was a time where a fire officer, I think a chief fire officers could help me with this one or verify, where there was leak of photos, I think of a recruit with a senior officer. And I think she was also holding or playing with something that she wasn't supposed to be playing with, right? And that led to his resignation, right? Could anybody confirm that for me? Any one of the fire officers or anybody? That? All right.
Yeah.
I'll continue.
Yeah, Marvin. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marvin.
Anton?
Yeah, but yes, I would say yes. In the interest of the presentation, but he really a situation did occur. All right, and I think in the best interest of the organization, he threw in his papers. Right. I wouldn't really say much more on it because it wasn't really publicized to any great extent.
Oh,
But
yes, I understand.
situation did occur, and the sitting chief, he did resign.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. All right. I know there are a lot of instances where certain things like these happen, and the higher authorities to them will tell them the best thing to do is to resign. All right. So another example, a Russia telecom minister is on a hot seat over charges that he owns a huge hunk of industries overseas, having secretly converted telecom business from state to ownership. Meaning, in other words, he secretly converted these companies or estates, organization, basically buy them for himself or however he procured them, right? So you know, some charges would have been laid, because some people in power or in high position, they tend to, you know, take certain things that is not belonging to them. So the question is, where is the moral in that? Another example, the US Army is still dealing with a fallout from Abu Ghraib prisoner abuse scandal, and also the US Air Force has canceled a $26 billion deal to lease tankers from Boeing Corporation after learning that a former procurement officer favored Boeing in contracts in order to hire the Airpros company, right? Right here in Trinidad, you know, based on experience, most people would know that sometimes there are a lot of contracts are being favored, right? Contractors are being favored over others because of the kickback in profit, because they may give their partner the contract, let me say $100,000 contract, and the person who give them that contract probably have to give them a $20,000 to hold in their pocket, and that is just for them to get the contract, right? So these are the kind of things that actually take place, and it actually taking place not in the US alone, but right here in Trinidad. The CEO of a giant health insurer, United Health Group, resigned under pressure after outside probe found he was involved in issuing millions of backdate stocks that benefited himself and other executives. Same thing right in Trinidad. I mean, cannot call names, but I know these things actually take place in many organizations, not just in the government office, but also in the private sector as well. The Harvard Business School professor and author Shosha Zuboff described the impact of these public sentiments. In individuals and organizations is marked by frustration, mistrust, disappointment. Right. So I'm moving on to ethics. Can anybody tell me what is ethics, or what they think ethics is? We have done that in our previous, in one of our semesters, right? We'd have done this by length and breadth. Anybody could remember anything off the top of their head pertaining to ethics, or what they think it is? In their own meaning, of course. All right. Ethics, the word ethics derived from the word ethos, which means way of life. Ethics is a branch of human conduct, more specifically the behavior of individuals in society. Ethics examine the rational justification of our moral judgment. It studies what is morally right or wrong, or just or unjust. What are some of the words that we think we could use pertaining to ethics, or what we could sum up ethics with? Anybody? Right. To sum up the word ethics, You will need to have integrity, value, moral, principle, fairness, responsibility, honor, and right. Right? So these are some of the words, ethics would refer to in many different ways. The ethical climate in the US, ethical lapse occur at every level of organizations. But top leaders in particular are facing closer scrutiny in light of recent unethical and illegal actions. It's going on at the top. What is going on at the top trickles down through organization and society. When leaders fail to set and live up to a high ethical standard, organization, employees, shareholders, and the general public suffer. Unethical and illegal behavior can lead to serious consequences for organizations. For one thing, companies have a hard time attracting good employees. Evidence shows that the recent wave of scandal has prompted job seekers to go to great lengths to check out companies' ethical standards. Right? In some organizations, some people are very skeptical about the organization they would want to work for. So in other words, they will do a background check. They will ask their friends about the organization. Especially let's say, for example, if somebody is thinking about joining the police service or the fire service or even defense force, anybody here could contest that somebody who wants to join the organization will actually ask them about joining the organization? Anybody ever experienced that? In some cases, there is not really. Okay. In some cases, I have experienced that many times over because there's a myth about Coast Guard. For some strange reason, some people believe that when you join Coast Guard, they tend to throw you off the ship out at sea, right? And tell you swim to shore. And if it is a car swim, tough luck. I have no idea where they get that from, but for some strange reason, Coast Guard have that stigma, right? I would say about 80% of the people who ask me about Coast Guard and joining and, to throw them off the boat and all these kind of things. I have to correct that statement and let them know that, that is not the case, right? We will not do something crazy like that, right? So this is simply what they mean. Right? They will go to great lengths, check out the company and the ethical standard within an organization before they actually join. When current employees lose trust in leaders, moral commitment and performance suffer. Customers who lose trust in the organization, they will bolt, as evidenced by mass decision of Otter Anderson after a firm was found guilty of obstruction of justice for destroying tons of documents related to Enron. Investors may also withdraw their support from the company or even file a lawsuit if they believe they have been lied to or cheated, right? And this basically happens all over the world, right? Where you have people will invest their money in a particular company. And as soon as a scandal comes out about the organization, if they are doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, they will actually pull out. And in some cases, as it's written here, they may be sued according to the contract that they may have with the organization. Leaders at all levels carry tremendous responsibility for setting an ethical climate and can act as role models for others. Dale Pros This gentleman here, had such a role model early in his career, now serving as a vice president of a global purchasing for a leading chemical company. Powell says he always consider the impact his decision and action have on others because he admired the consistent quality of a previous supervisor. So this gentleman here, Mr. Dale, he looked at someone before him, a predecessor, and took some great values from him. And he has the main things. And the main thing is he talks about his decision and his actions. Because sometimes our decision and action as leaders in certain organization can have a great effect on our organization. Because I know from time to time, you would hear they say, this officer or this individual bring the organization into disrepute, right? And for defense force personnel, we would know for sure that have some serious charges or lost work in layman terms behind it when we bring the organization into disrepute. However, leaders face many pressures that challenge their ability to do the right thing. Most dangerous obstacle for leaders are personal weakness and self-interest rather than full-scale corruption. Right? So leaders now, they have to be very careful in how they're dealing with things. And sometimes outside influence does bring on pressure and bring on also what we call dishonesty in leaders. Pressure, they may face pressure to cut costs, increase profit, meet the demands of vendors or business partners, and look successful and where contribution of ethic could elapse. During the stock market, back in the 90s, for example, many leaders they were caught overriding and emphasizing on fast profits and even growth in stock prices. The practice of the reward for managers and options basically it was unethical because they have lost the foresight because they focus so much on making profit and money, right? Cause them basically for greed to step in, right? Most people want to like and they want to like the organization to look good and to be successful. Leaders sometimes do the wrong thing just to look good to others on the outside. But the question to leaders is whether they can summon the fortitude to do the right thing despite outside pressures. Life is living on a slippery slope, says Harvard Business School, Richard Towell. It takes a person of character to know what lines you do not cross. So let's do some comparing on ethical and ethical. So when we look at unethical, is arrogant and self-serving, right? So some people, they're very arrogant and self-serving, meaning they're self-centered, and they're always about themselves, what they could do or what they could get. So that's the only things they have for that. Exclusive promotes, self-interest, practice, deception, breach disagreement, deals unfairly, and so on. On the ethical leader side, you have the purposes of humanity, which is important, maintaining concern for the greater good. Is honesty and straightforward, fulfills commitment, strive for fairness, takes responsibility, shows respect for each other, encourage and develop others, and that is important. Serve others. Acting like a moral leader. So what does it take to act or to operate like a modern leader? Many leaders forget that business is about values, not just economic performance. Moral leadership doesn't mean ignoring profit or loss or stock price, production costs, and other hand measurable facts. But it does require recognition of importance of moral values, human meaning, quality, and higher purpose. Henry Ford, a century-old comment, seems tailor-made for today's poor ethical climate. For a long time, people believed that the only purpose of industry was to make profit. They were wrong. Its purpose is to serve the general welfare. So take, for example, our organization. Our organization, meaning police, fire, prisons, immigration, is to serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago, not to serve ourselves. So we are servants of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But how much people really do, put that first? The motto of Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, service before self. Meaning you put in the work first, you put in the people of Trinidad and Tobago first, before you put yourself. It's about yourself last. But how much people do actually hold that at face value? Not much. Some people just go to work, do what they have to do, and head home. But there's no passion, there's no love, and in some cases there are no integrities. In the hospitals, in some cases where the government may buy sheets and may buy certain things, the nurses and the doctors may take it and carry it to their private practices. All right. Well, I know for sure in the defense force, somebody ration might mysteriously go missing, or the trucks with, certain furniture and TVs. Yeah, the truck does make a turn. So the truck may pick up 12 TVs in Megastore, right? And on the highway there. And by the time it reached Stobbles Bay or even Tetron Barracks, right? It had 12. By the time it reached, it have about 2 TVs. Right? Don't ask me where it go. Don't ask me who take it and who is responsible. But that is just how the things just go sometimes. Right? And I'm pretty sure it happens in most organizations. Despite of the corporate realities of greed, competitions, and the drive to achieve goals and profits, leaders can act from moral values and encourage others to develop and to use moral values in the workplace, which is important. The single most important factor in ethical decision-making in organization is whether leaders show a commitment to ethics in their talk and especially their behavior. Employees learn about the values that are important to the organization by watching leaders. So all of us in this class, we are leaders, whether you believe it or not, because our organization basically puts us in that position? Because if it is you want more money within the organization, or you want a fatter paycheck, you will have to do your promotional exams, and then you will also have to accept responsibility. Because when you get promoted, you basically, and you accept the rank, you also accept the responsibilities that actually comes with the rank. And you will definitely have subordinates and people below your charge in which you now would be responsible for. Some people join the organization and they will say, well, they want to be in charge and nothing, or they don't want to lead, and or they don't accept that. But they want to accept the rank, to accept the money. If that is the case, then you had a better remain a private OS or a constable, right? So, right. So these are some of the things an acting leader or an acting leader should uphold with moral values. Develop and articulate and uphold high moral principles, focus on what is right for the organization as well as all the people involved. Set the example you want to others to live by. Be honest with yourself and others. And I think being honest is a critical part of this thing, right? Of being a moral leader. As my colleague said earlier, right? You need to stand your bounds or stand responsibility, especially for when things go wrong. So you have to be honest to yourself. Sometimes leaders have the tendency, they will tell their subordinates, right, go down the road or go so and do whatever. And then, as you know, layman terms, when the shit hit the fan and something goes wrong, and somebody in higher authority start to ask questions and get on bad, you know, the individual will now say, well, I didn't tell the OS or the private to do that. So they're looking to take themselves out, right? But you have to be honest with yourself in order to be, you know, a good leader, right? Establish and communicate ethical principles, develop a backbone. And this is what we're talking about. Developing that backbone is to stand up with your subordinates and tell your superior officer, because there's obviously will be somebody over you, yes, I did so by so. You understand? I told the ordinary seaman to do X, Y, and Z, right? So that in itself is what everybody should practice, or most individuals should practice, in order to be, you know, to act like a moral leader. Rewards ethical conduct, treat everyone with fairness, dignity, and respect. Most important, from the lowest level to the highest level of the organization. In some cases, when some people get promoted, they feel like a talk to the subordinates and do what they want, disrespect them, and then you want to give also your superior officer lip, in other words, or in layman terms, right? So we have to be mindful of that. Do the right thing in both private and professional life, in your private and professional life, even if no one else is looking. Me, I just always tell them somebody always watching, right? That is part of my slogan, right? I always tell them, recruits and them, that somebody always watching. When you think nobody watching, somebody watching, right? So always do the right thing. Moreover, leaders realize that what they do in their personal life carries over to their professional arena. Leaders are a model for the organization 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So everywhere you go as a Coast Guard officer, fire officer, police officer, prison officer, immigration officer, as the case might be, any organization, you have to carry about yourself at a certain level of decorum. Because at the end of the day, if you lineman on the beach, especially for a Coast Guard officer, and you know people know that you are an officer of the law, they will expect if something goes wrong, somebody youngin, them looking to you to lead them or for you to assist them or come up with some, you know, some kind of something to save somebody's life. And that is just it. Consider Mike Price, who was fired as a university from the University of Alabama, a football coach, before he was before he ever coached a game. While in Florida participating in a golf tournament, Price spent hundreds of dollars on drinks, tips for exotic dancers, to spend the night with a woman other than his wife, and ran up a $1,000 room service bill. The university administration fired Price as a clear signal that boys will be boys mindset in the athletic department, who no longer will tolerate it. The visible leadership position entails the responsibility for conducting both one's personal and professional life in an ethical manner. So because of the position in which this individual holds and the way he conducted himself as being one, a married person, two, he holds a high office, which is a coach for a football team, he displayed himself, I'm not even sure if I should use the word as a common man, right? But sometimes they might place it like that as a common man, right? So this was unethical to the university. Boys will be boys. That is not for his position, right? So in light of that, he was fired based on that. So now we move on to becoming a moral leader. Leadership is not merely a set of practices with no association with right or wrong. All leadership practices can be used for good or evil and thus have a moral dimension. So there are some leaders can lead people, yes, but they can lead them in the wrong way. Meaning, so let me say, for instance, Hitler, he had led a multitude of people, but he led them down the wrong way where they were doing immoral things or unethical things by killing and destroying a lot of people all over the place, right? So yes, he was a leader, but was he a good leader? Right? So leaders choose whether to act from selflessness and greed, to diminish others or in ways that serve or motivate others to develop to their full potential as employee and as a human being. So some leaders have some styles that would empower individuals to actually grow, right? And that is important to teach us subordinate certain things or put them in certain position and advise them accordingly for them to grow within the organization. Leaders have great influence over others, which is very true. And moral leadership gives life to others and enhances the life of others. Immoral leadership takes away others from order to enhance oneself. Right? So there are some people will empower you, and then there are some people will belittle you because they don't like you for whatever reason, or they're just selfish. They will fight you down because they don't want to see you move up into a position or be in the same rank as them. Some of us may have that experience where somebody that is junior to them, they don't like them for whatever reason, and they don't want you to be on the same level with them. They want you to knock class with them, or they can't detail you as they used to before. Servant leadership. What is a leader? Moral responsibility towards followers. It is to limit and control. It is to limit and control them to meet the needs of the organization. It is to pay them a fair wage, or is it to enable them to grow and create and expand themselves as human beings? Much of the thinking about leaders today implies that moral leadership encourages chance towards turning followers into leaders, thereby developing their potential rather than using a leadership position to control or limit people. Leadership courage. Throughout this chapter, you would have probably noticed words like backbone, guts, and fortitude. No doubt about it. Doing the right thing requires courage. Leaders sometimes have to reach deep within themselves to find the strength and courage to resist temptation or to stand up for moral principles when others may ridicule them. Right? So moral leadership, as we go down further into this chapter, we will learn about that. So I will now hand over to Mr. Hercules.
Good afternoon, class. So we will now look at some leaders who showed how moral or their morals in their own way. Right. So first off, we have Mr. Jeffrey Swartz. He was the former CEO of Timberland and the third generation of CEOs. His grandfather founded Timberland. Right. So he, like his father and his father before him, had a passion for high quality boots, shoes, and outdoor gear, which his company made. But what kept him going was the larger purpose of helping to solve problems that the world was facing. So this is what led him to build a culture of service at Timberland that is still unparalleled in the corporate world to date. So Timberland employees get 40 paid hours of leave annually to pursue volunteer activities, which can either be projects that the company itself involved in or any one of its choosing. Any of the choosing of the employee, the employee could choose any one of the social or non-profit organizations to participate in, right? And this is called part of service. There's also the City Year, a program, a non-profit program that deals with schools and students, right? This is done for entire year. People will come into the public service and deal with students and schools, right? And the headquarters for this City Year program is in Timberland itself. Timberland also holds a day-long something called a Serverpalooza, when the company shuts down for an entire day and employees all around the world participate in volunteer work. So in 2005, Serverpalooza hosted 170 service projects in over 27 countries. This represented about 45,000 volunteer hours. Right? So Timberland, he created a culture of service, especially to the non-profit organizations. He created that kind of culture. However, in 1995, when Timberland was facing financial crisis, one of his bankers told him that he had to, quote unquote, cut out the country club manner that he does, that, you know, everybody is everybody on the same level, you know, you're part of the country club, the banker telling me what's going on. You see that, cut it out. But instead of heeding the advice, was so that he would double the amount of paid service time for the employees. And a matter of fact, he managed to turn around the company. And since then, Timberland has seen a growing in sales and profits. Swart believe that commerce and justice should go hand in hand, right? And he was using Timberland as a living laboratory to prove it. So the core values of humanity, humility, integrity, and excellence is what most of his employees and anybody who was dealing with Timberland, they saw. And that was always, Timberland was always in the conversation when coming to these things. A matter of fact, Timberland was voted 10 years straight as one of the best companies to work for in America, top 100 companies to work for in America. They were voted 10 years straight based on the culture that Jeffrey Schwartz had incorporated into the Timberland and its brand. Another example of a moral leader is Mr. Clive Warrillow. He was the president of Volkswagen of America, and he as well represented moral leaders all over the world, right? His values, his focus on soft management, and he had a commitment to process orientation. When Clive Warrillow took over as president of Volkswagen, the American division, it was in a mess. It had sluggish sales and the workforce was demoralized. So Volkswagen being a German company, the executives believed that the situation called for a strong-handed approach, a strong hand to the top, a strong-handed president. But Warrillow believed that this style no longer would. So what he did was he developed the courage to risk his career by challenging the status quo. You was talking about the status quo. You know, you don't want to jeopardize your career, so you just kind of jump and follow suit. He didn't do that, right? So, for example, he had implemented that the area managers who before had to ask headquarters for permission to make even the smallest decision. What he did, he allowed them to approach their jobs in their own individual ways, right? So, for instance, if a manager wanted to cut back on advertising and use money for bonuses, they had the freedom to do so without any question asked. Warrillow also changed the relationship with the dealers. So rather than reprimanding, ridiculing, or terminating dealers who miss their sales target, what he will do is ask them what they learned from the situation that will enable them to do things better in the future. He emphasized trust as the foundation of his leadership and encouraged other managers to build good relationships with their subordinates. At one point, he even took 3 busloads of his executives up to a farm in California, a horse farm in California, where they met this guy, Monty Roberts. So I don't know how much of you here would have seen the movie Horse Whisperer, right? That was Monty Roberts was the movie was based off of Monty Roberts, right? And what he displayed was he took a young horse, a young wild horse, and instead of breaking them the horse the traditional way, he showed them that the horse could learn to accept the bridle and the saddle without any kind of force or any shouting or with little resistance, right? And Warrillow used this as a metaphor to show that managers could win over people rather than bossing them around, right? So instead of just telling them something, you win them over, you build their confidence, you get the confidence in you and in themselves, and they will learn to do the work. You will not have to boss them around or be over them all the time. So because he had that management style or that leadership style or that moral leadership style, Volkswagen had an impressive comeback and that showed that here was going on. His style was what the company needed at that time. However, the German executives reminded him that, business in itself is tough. So this soft-handed way that he's dealing with management, the upper or the German executives wasn't too happy. So after 4 years of leading Volkswagen of America, Warrillow was replaced by the top management itself, and after which he decided to retire. However, he will always be remembered as having the courage to go against the grain and to do what he believed was best for the company, even if it might not have been best for his own career. Because we all know that going against the status quo is difficult, because it is easier to stay with what is familiar than to initiate bold change, even if staying with what is familiar leads to certain failure. Next, we have Mr. Clive William Pollard. He was the chairman of Service Master. Right? Service Master was a company that dealt with the cleaning of schools, hospitals, and other buildings. Right? So this was menial work. Right? Meaning that you're scrubbing floors, you're cleaning toilets, you're killing little rodents and getting rid of bugs and whatnot. But because of his leadership, the employees of Service Master had a sense of dignity, responsibility, and meaningfulness. Right? Pollard believed that it was immoral to take away an employee's right to make decisions, and he saw leaders as having a moral responsibility to help employees develop to their full potential, which meant giving them skills, information, tools, and the authority they needed to act independently. He described himself as a leader who leads with a servant's heart, and he encouraged others to lead in the same manner. Under his stewardship, leaders throughout Service Master didn't see their jobs as just getting people to perform at work. Instead, there was to help employees become well-rounded people, enabling them to grow as individuals who contributed not only at work, but also at home and in their communities. The care of employees felt about themselves, about their work, and about the people they interacted with. The leaders and supervisors at Service Master also insisted that they kept an open door policy, and they made themselves available to listen to any concerns that their subordinates or the employees would have come to them with. Because to Pollard, the real leader is not the person with the most distinguished title, the highest paid, or who had the longest tenure, but the role model, the risk taker, the servant, not the person that promotes himself or herself, but the promoter of others. Right? He also has a best-selling book named The Soul of the Firm, right? Along with other things that other books and magazines that he would have participated with. So we're going back in history a bit for another example, and that is Mr. Roll Wallenberg. He was a wealthy, politically connected upper-class Swede from a prominent, well-respected family, right? But he grew up, he came to fruition in a time where humanity in itself was being questionable, and that is during World War II. Raoul Wallenberg, during the months of World War II, when they were piling away the Jews and they on trains carrying them to the death camps, he climbed on top one of the roofs. He climbed on top the roofs of one of the trains, bounded for one of those camps, ignoring shots and bullets from the Nazi soldiers. He began handing out fake Swedish passports to the astonishment of the Jews that were inside, ordering them to walk to the caravan of cars marked with Swedish colors. So by the time the cars were loaded, the soldiers were so dumbfounded by the young man's action that they simply stood by and let the cars pass, carrying to safety dozens of Jews who had been who was headed for death. However, Mr. Roel Wallenberg, he went to the Soviet Union and they arrested him under the suspicion of being a spy. And it's believed that he died in one of those Soviet prisons. But to date, it's estimated that he saved around 100,000 persons, right? And he gave his life. He gave his life fighting for a cause he believed in and his actions made a real difference in the world. The reality is that most leaders never get the opportunity to save lives. For few leaders has helped as many people as Wardenburg did. But the principles of moral leadership was demonstrated, and he had shown value not only in his life, but the lives of others, and he made a positive difference. We all know this guy here, this figure here, Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. He was the British Prime Minister during World War II, right? And going through all his quotes, and we all know that he was a man of words. He was a man of words. He was able to motivate the British people, right? In the face of defeat, he was able to rally his troops, rally the British people to stand against the tyranny of the Nazi Empire, right? So one of his quotes was, "Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." We'll now play a video here taken from the scene of "We Will Never Surrender."
To the question of the invasion, I would observe that there has never been a period in all these long centuries of which we boast when an absolute guarantee against invasion could have been given to our people. But I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and the best arrangements are made as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the result of His Majesty's government in Canada. To your right, that is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of the Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender! And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or large part of it were where we're subjugated and starving, then our empire, beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Right. So in closing, it have 3 activities in this chapter. Right. The pages are 166, 177, and 183. So I encourage you in your own time to, answer the
All right, it seems that these guys are having some connectivity issues where they're at. We may just have to pause a little bit and wait for them to reconnect, for them to continue on. You guys hearing me?
Yes, sir. We hear
Yes,
you. We have some problems. Yes, the audio.
Yes, sir.
Looks like we lost them all together there. Let's see if they come back in. All right, Marvin, you're gonna have to pick back up where you left off after that video presentation.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that, sir.
That's okay. That's not your fault.
That's all of them.
You have to do the share again.
Yes, sir. Share that screen. Are you seeing it again?
Yeah, we're seeing it now.
Okay, great. Right, so before I hand you all over to Mr. Maraj, this here is 3 activities in the chapter 6 itself. So on to the class, to my classmates, on your own time, you can go to them. It's just mostly true or mostly false answers. It's a good read, and it's something that I think you'll enjoy answering. So I now hand you over to Mr. Derek Maraj.
All right, good afternoon. Once again, apologies for the break in transmission there. We would have gotten some internet issues, right? I will be speaking about moral courage. Moral courage, taking action when your values are put to the test, is written by Rushworth M. Kidder and is published by William Morrow. So the first question I ask is, what is moral courage? All right, and moral courage involves the willingness to speak out and do that which is right in the face of forces that would lead a person to act in some other way, right? Acting like a moral leader requires personal courage. And it is said, to practice moral leadership, leaders have to know themselves, understand their strengths and weaknesses, know what they stand for, and often be non-conformists. Now, the police officers in this class will know exactly what I'm talking about, except in our case, we are labeled as troublemakers for standing up and doing what is right. And I'm sure that the police officers here will agree with me, right? There are three circles of moral courage, right? Moral courage exists at the intersection of these three domains here, right? A commitment to moral principles and awareness of the dangers involved in supporting those principles, and a willingness to endure the risks. Now, principles we'll deal with first. When faced with a choice, leaders can assess the situation to determine whether it requires moral courage and then determine the specific value that needs to be upheld. Right? And according to Kidder, the first step in behaving with moral courage is to focus on one or two key values that fit the situation. In the chapter, he uses the example of a human resource manager at a manufacturing company in a small town who noticed some odd expenditure while working on the annual budget and discovered that the boss man in charge of the company had charged champagne for his daughter's wedding to the company. Now, the manager knew that her job would be on the line if she brought her concerns into the open, but her commitment to the principles of fairness and honesty compelled her to act despite the risk of being fired. Right? Danger. The second key to moral courage lies in accurately assessing the degree of risk. Leaders need to carefully consider what the potential negative consequences of the actions might be and make a conscious decision that standing up for their convictions is worth the risk. Now, in the TDPS, we know that the danger of exhibiting moral courage at this level could very well be a transfer to a Matlot police station when you're living in Diego Martin. It has happened in the past, and that fear still hangs over your head to a certain extent. Right? And endurance now. This is where the leader understands what key values are at stake, assesses the risks involved, and believes in upholding moral principles. Yet he or she still lacks the courage to act. Right? Leaders need a certain degree of self-confidence to move from contemplating the action. However, in many instances, that self-confidence is lacking. All right? It is said that where principles, danger, and endurance intersect, that's the little brown portion on this slide here, it is there that moral courage can be found. Right? And how many of us as supervisors have had situations where we knew that morally something had to be done, we assessed the risk to our careers if we spoke out, yet we lacked the confidence to act? How many of us has this happened to? This has happened to me in the past, but of course, you know what they said about hindsight vision, right? Hindsight vision is always 20/20, right? So we will now view a very short video on moral courage.
Also tschüss dann, der Dreh hat mal wieder voll Spaß gemacht. Ich freue mich schon auf den fertigen Film. Ja. Ach, der Typ von der Requisite hat mir das hier in die Hand gedrückt. Kann ich dir das gerade mitgeben? Klar, kannst du nehmen. Alla, tschüss dann. Ja, ciao.
Alter, mach das. Ey, fettes Schicksal wieder, oder? Hast du hier eine gesehen? Die hat den krasseren Arsch wie hier Megan Fox, oder? Hä? Ich schwöre, Alter, was so? Was meinst du, Mann, ey? Mann, die da so geil abgetanzt hat, Alter, die hast du doch gesehen, oder? Hä? Mann, ich schwöre dir, morgen gehe ich wieder Disco.
Ja, ich bin dabei, Mann, ey. Geht ab, Mann.
Auf jeden Fall, ey, Alter. Ey, Kevin, Digga, guck mal da vorne, hä? Die ist doch auch heiß, oder?
Oh, ey.
Ey, komm, Alter. Nur die geilen Chicks heute unterwegs, oder? Hä?
Die geht voll ab, Mann, ey.
Hey, Süße, hä? Wie ist denn deine Nummer? Ich sind's hier mal Porno.
Ja, Porno.
Ich schwör, du bist die verdammt geilste, die ich heute gesehen habe, ja? Komm, kommst du mit raus, dann geb ich dir was zum Blasen, oder?
Das ist aber mal genug, jetzt lass ihn mal in Ruhe.
Hat die was gesagt?
Nö.
Also.
All right, look like we lost connectivity again with them. Yeah, definitely dropping off again.
Yeah, the video actually is up.
Yeah, that. Yeah, lack of bandwidth there, home by you.
Let's pray.
Right, now, having viewed that video and based
Okay,
on what was explained
guys.
about the three domains.
Guys, hold on. We
Hello?
missed part of that video because your feed dropped off again.
Oh gosh, apologies
No,
again.
don't worry about it. Just move forward. Just let you know that part of the video we didn't see. Just when the guy started to shout at the girl, it kind of got stuck there, and then when we came back, we saw the guy holding the can in his hand. All right. I think one of the things you could do is the links for these clips that you have, put them in the chat so other people can go and look at it afterwards. All right. But
Okay, very well, sir. And again, apologies for this horrible
you can't do anything about that. That is outside your sphere of influence at this point in time. Let's focus on what you can do now. Okay.
All right, so moving on to the final part of this chapter, we'll deal with scary person. Now, when you hear the term scary person, can anyone in the class tell me what they understand by the term scary person?
Probably somebody that you're frightened to approach.
All right, and
I would say a grouch or an approachable person, not a difficult to approach.
once you carry, you look. So because of that, now you don't approach them, and you avoid building a relationship with them. Right now, I could relate personally to this because as a junior police officer, I worked at the best of street police stations, Belmont, Mover, and those kind of areas where, as a police officer, if you go out and you're smiling at everybody, you ain't getting no respect from nobody. So you had a serious beast face all the time, And that stayed with me for years. Right? And as a result like that now, members of the public and even other officers felt that I was unapproachable. Right? And it was only when I became a supervisor that I was made aware of my behavior. And I had to adjust in order to gain the trust and support of my junior officers. But you know, when the ice was broken and they realized how much nonsense I could talk, and I could really talk nonsense, they realized how wrong they were about me being a scary person. Well, you know, of course, there's a time and place for everything, right? And this brings us to the end of our presentation on Chapter 6. We wish to thank each and every one of you for your undivided attention, your participation, and your patience with us and this internet issues. All right, are there any questions?
All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to stop the recording.